I never thought that at 64, life would still hold so many unexpected moments for me. It began as an ordinary day on the farm, no different from the countless others before it. The sun shone brightly overhead, warming the fields, while a gentle breeze provided a soothing touch as I went about my chores. I've lived on this farm most of my life, and since my husband's passing, it became my refuge, my safe space. Yet today felt different. There was something in the air, something I couldn't quite define. My nephew Jimmy had been staying with me for a while, helping out with the heavy lifting and ensuring I was well cared for. He was in his mid-20s, a strong, attractive young man with a natural charm that was hard to overlook. It was comforting having him around, the shared meals, the laughter, the simple company. I hadn't realized how much I missed the sound of another voice until he arrived. He was always so thoughtful, so caring. And even though he was my nephew, I sometimes caught myself looking at him longer than I should have. That afternoon we worked side by side in the barn, stacking hay bales and feeding the animals. Sweat glistened on his brow, his shirt clinging to his well-built frame. I noticed how he moved through the work, effortless yet gentle, in a way that caught my eye. As he bent to lift another bale, I couldn't help but admire his strength, the way his body seemed perfectly attuned to the rhythm of the land. My heart fluttered in a way I hadn't felt in ages. We took a break, sitting together on the old wooden fence that overlooked the fields. The sky was streaked with pink and orange as the sun dipped, casting a warm glow over everything. Jimmy glanced at me, his expression soft, with a depth I couldn't quite name. "You've done so much here, Aunt Sua," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I don't know how you manage it, day in and day out," I offered, a small, shy smile, feeling a bit flustered by his words. "It's just life," I replied, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "It's what I know." Jimmy shifted a little closer, his arm brushing against mine, sending a shiver through me. For the first time, I became keenly aware of just how close we were. His gaze lingered on mine, and in that instant, something changed. The way he looked at me wasn't the way a nephew typically looks at his aunt. It held a deeper meaning, something that made my pulse race. A heavy silence settled between us, thick with unspoken thoughts. I wanted to break it, to say something, but the words wouldn't come. My mind spun, my heart pounded, and I hadn't felt this alive in years. Then, as if sensing my thoughts, Jimmy gently placed his hand over mine, his touch sending a jolt of warmth through me. "Aunt Sua," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to say this, but I've been feeling something. Something I can't ignore." I swallowed, suddenly aware of the dryness in my throat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice unsteady. His eyes locked onto mine, intense and filled with emotion. "I know we're family, but I feel drawn to you in a way I can't explain. I think about you all the time, your laugh, the way you carry yourself. There's just something about you, Sue, or something that makes me feel things I've never felt before." I was at a loss for words. How could this be happening? How could my own nephew, this vibrant young man, be saying such things to me? And yet, as I looked into his eyes, I realized I felt the same. The emotions I had tried to bury were bubbling to the surface, undeniable and impossible to suppress. "Jimmy, I don't know what to say," I stammered, my mind reeling. "You don't have to say anything," he replied softly. "I just wanted you to know how I feel. I'm not expecting anything, I just needed to tell you." We sat there for a long moment, his hand still resting on mine, as the sun slipped below the horizon, leaving us in the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. My heart raced, my mind a storm of thoughts and feelings. So many questions lingered, so many things remained unsaid. But for now, none of that mattered. What mattered was this moment, this new and unexpected chapter in my life. And as Jimmy's hand held mine once more, I understood that whatever came next, we would face it together. The days that followed felt almost surreal, as if the world outside the farm had faded away, leaving just the two of us in a bubble of emotions neither of us fully understood. Jimmy continued helping with the daily chores, but now there was an unspoken tension between us. Every touch, every glance seemed to carry a new charge, an electricity that wasn't there before. It felt like we were walking a fine line between danger and excitement, balancing on the edge of something unknown yet thrilling. One afternoon, we worked together near the old apple trees at the far edge of the farm, gathering the last of the season's fruit. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the fields. Jimmy stood beside me, his arms full of apples, his shirt sticking to his skin from the heat of the day. He caught me looking at him, and for a brief moment, we both froze. The air between us was thick with tension, a smouldering desire that neither of us could ignore. "Sewer," he said quietly, stepping closer, his voice deep and rough. "I can't stop thinking about you, about us." "This is insane," I whispered, my words barely audible. "We shouldn't feel this way." "But we do," he replied, his tone low and filled with emotion. "And I don't want to fight it anymore." Before I could say anything else, Jimmy closed the small gap between us, gently cradling my face in his hands. He leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in the lightest, most hesitant kiss, like a question waiting for an answer. A wave of warmth swept through me, and suddenly all my reasons melted away. I forgot why we shouldn't, forgot everything but the sensation of his lips on mine. The kiss deepened as he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me closer. My hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the strength in his frame, and I kissed him back with a passion I hadn't felt in years. His lips were soft and warm, tasting faintly of the apples we had just picked. I felt myself melting into him, every touch sending shivers down my spine. We only parted when we were out of breath, both of us standing there, hearts pounding. I looked up at him, my mind spinning with the realization of what had just happened. But as I held his gaze, I understood that I didn't feel shame or regret. I felt alive, more alive than I had in a long time. "I don't want to stop," I murmured, surprised by the intensity of my own words. Jimmy's expression softened, and he gave me that smile that made my heart flutter. "Neither do I," he said, before leaning in again, capturing my lips in another kiss, this time more urgent, more intense. His hand slid down my back, pulling me firmly against him, and I felt the heat radiating from his body. My fingers tangled in his hair as the kiss deepened, the world around us fading away, until only he remained, only this moment. We lost track of time, standing there in the golden light of late afternoon, kissing as though nothing else mattered. His kisses were a blend of tenderness and longing, as if he couldn't get enough of me, and I found myself matching his intensity, meeting his every kiss with equal fervor. Each time our lips met, it was like a spark igniting inside me, awakening something long dormant. When we finally pulled away, breathless, I rested my forehead against his chest, feeling the fast thudding of his heart beneath my cheek. He held me close, his arms wrapped around me, and for the first time in years I felt truly secure. Later that evening, we sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Jimmy's arm rested casually over my shoulders, his fingers tracing gentle circles on my skin. I leaned into him, my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breath. I don't know what the future holds, I said softly, breaking the peaceful silence, but I know I don't want to face it without you. Jimmy turned to me, his eyes warm and full of affection. He gently tilted my chin up, so our eyes met, his thumb grazing my lower lip, sending a shiver through me. I feel the same, he murmured, his voice deep and close. I don't care what anyone thinks. I just want to be with you. Without waiting for my reply, he kissed me again, starting gently, then deepening the kiss, his lips moving against mine in a slow, sensual rhythm that made my heart race. His hand cradled the back of my head, keeping me close as he explored my mouth with his own. The kiss grew more passionate, more demanding, and I responded in kind, pressing closer, wanting more. His kisses were intoxicating, each one sending waves of warmth through me. I felt his hand trail down my arm, his fingers brushing lightly over my skin, leaving a path of goosebumps in their wake. His touch was both gentle and purposeful, and I knew there was no turning back now. We had crossed a line, but instead of fear, I felt a thrilling anticipation. As the night stretched on, we found ourselves wrapped in each other's embrace again, this time with no hesitation, no doubts. We kissed as if we had all the time in the world, slowly, deeply, savoring every touch and every moment. His hands moved over me, caressing, exploring, and I could feel the heat between us grow with every second. We spent the night together, enveloped in each other's warmth, our kisses gradually becoming softer, more languid as the hours passed. Each time our lips met, it felt like we were sharing something profound, something beyond words. His kisses told me everything that he desired me, that he cared for me, that this wasn't just a fleeting encounter, it was real, and it was ours to hold on to. In the quiet darkness of the night, as we lay there entwined, Jimmy's lips found mine again, giving me a lingering kiss that felt like a promise. His hand gently cradled my face, his thumb brushing softly over my cheek as he kissed me tenderly, savoring each moment. I returned the kiss with the same gentle affection, a wave of calm washing over me. I'm so grateful we found each other, I whispered against his lips, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Jimmy smiled, resting his forehead against mine. Me too, Sue, more than you know. For the rest of the night, we stayed close, sharing soft kisses and quiet moments in the warmth of my bed. Each touch, each kiss felt like a reassurance that this was right, that we had found something rare and beautiful. As I drifted off to sleep in his arms, I realized that whatever lay ahead, we would face it side by side, hand in hand. The days that followed felt like a dream. We continued our work on the farm, but now every moment was filled with subtle touches, shared smiles, and secret kisses. Whenever Jimmy passed by, his hand would brush against mine, or he'd steal a quick kiss when no one was looking. The air between us thrummed with a quiet passion that lingered just beneath the surface. One evening, after a long day's work, we decided to walk through the fields as the sun was setting. A cool breeze rustled the tall grass around us, and the sky was painted with vibrant shades of pink and orange. We walked hand in hand, the silence between us comfortable, full of an understanding that needed no words. As we reached the top of the hill, Jimmy paused, drawing me closer, wrapping his arms around my waist. He leaned in, capturing my lips in a slow, lingering kiss. The warmth of his body pressed to mine, the softness of his lips, and the way his hands cradled my face, it all felt perfect. Time seemed to pause as we kissed beneath the fading light, the rest of the world disappearing around us. I love you, he murmured against my lips, his voice thick with emotion. Tears welled in my eyes as I kissed him back, my heart swelling with joy. I love you too, Jimmy. And as we held each other close, kissing under the setting sun, I realized that no matter what challenges we might face, we would face them together. The world might not understand us, but we had found something special, something worth holding on to. In that moment, I understood that love, true love, was all that really mattered. Later that night, as we returned to the farm, Jimmy's lips lingered on mine, his embrace making everything else fade away. In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. It was just the two of us, wrapped in each other, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. His hands gently caressed my back, pulling me closer, and we stood there, kissing slowly and deeply, without hesitation. The passion between us simmered just below the surface, ready to overflow. I don't want this night to end, Jimmy whispered, his voice low and filled with longing as he gazed into my eyes. I felt the same. The connection we shared was undeniable, and I wanted to let the night unfold without limits. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt the pull between us growing stronger with each passing moment. Then don't let it, I whispered back, my voice soft but filled with meaning. Jimmy's eyes darkened with emotion, and without another word he took my hand and led me back to the farmhouse. The walk felt long, each step carrying a building sense of anticipation, our hands intertwined, our movements in sync. By the time we reached the front door, the night had fully settled, stars twinkling overhead, and the quiet of the farm deepened the intimacy between us. Once inside, Jimmy closed the door gently behind him and turned to face me. There was something unspoken in his gaze, something raw, deep, and full of affection. He stepped forward, cradling my face in his hands, and kissed me softly at first, then more urgently. His kisses felt like promises, like unspoken confessions, and I returned them with equal passion, my fingers threading through his hair as I pulled him closer. We stumbled into the bedroom, our lips never parting, our bodies pressing together as the urgency between us grew. Jimmy's hands moved over my body, sending shivers through me, awakening feelings I hadn't experienced in so long. His lips trailed down my neck, his breath warm against my skin, and I let out a soft sigh as the heat between us built. Clothes were shed in a blur, and soon we were tangled together, skin to skin, the outside world forgotten. His kisses became more demanding, more fervent, and I matched his intensity, my hands exploring the contours of his body. It felt as though every barrier between us had vanished, and we were free to lose ourselves in the moment. Jimmy's touch was gentle but filled with desire, his hands tracing my curves with reverence. He kissed me deeply, our mouths moving in perfect harmony, and each kiss ignited a spark within me, awakening a flame that had long been dormant. I had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted like this, to be loved so completely. We moved together as if we had done this 1,000 times before, our bodies finding a natural rhythm, our breaths growing shallow as we lost ourselves in each other. His hands gripped my hips, pulling me closer, and I let out a soft moan as we became one, the world dissolving into nothing but sensation. It was slow at first, tender, as if we were savoring each touch, each moment. But soon it grew more urgent, more intense, driven by a need we could not control. The night stretched on, and we spent it entwined in each other's arms, exploring, touching and kissing, doing everything lovers do when they're caught up in passion. Jimmy's whispered words of affection filled the air around us, his breath warm against my skin as he told me how much he wanted me, how deeply he cared for me. I echoed his words, my voice trembling with emotion as I confessed just how much I had fallen for him. We made love in a way that felt timeless, as though nothing else mattered but this connection, this moment. It was raw and passionate, yet tender and full of love. Each kiss, each touch was a reminder that we had found something rare, something beautiful, and I cherished every second of it. Hours passed, yet it felt like time stood still. Eventually, we lay together in a tangle of sheets, our bodies still close, his arm wrapped around me as I rested my head on his chest. The steady rhythm of his breathing was calming, and a deep sense of contentment settled over me. The night had been everything I hadn't realized I was missing. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," I whispered, tracing gentle circles on his skin with my fingertips. Jimmy kissed the top of my head, his lips lingering there before he spoke. "Neither did I," he said softly, emotion thick in his voice. "But I'm so glad we found each other." His words filled my heart with warmth, and I couldn't help but smile as I looked up at him, our eyes meeting in the dim light of the room. I knew then that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The bond we had formed was undeniable, and there was no going back from what we had shared. It was real, and it was ours. As the night wore on, we drifted into sleep in each other's arms, his warmth surrounding me, his soft breathing lulling me into the most peaceful rest I had known in years. The future might be uncertain, but I no longer feared it. I had discovered something unexpected, something beautiful in Jimmy's love, and it had brought me back to life in ways I could never have imagined. As we lay there intertwined as lovers, I knew that no matter what others thought or what obstacles we might encounter, we would face them together. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't alone. I had found love again, and it was more than I ever dared to hope for.